Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the second installment of Dine and Learn. It's July 9th, 2018. Our topic is Sephardic Halacha after the Spanish expulsion. You should have two sheets. One that says number 1, the other says number 2. We'll finish up number 1. So last week we talked about why do we call Middle Eastern Jews, I guess we only have number 2 for you. Share. Why do we call Middle Eastern Jews Sephardic when Sfard means Spain? So Yisrael Shem, tonight we'll talk about a little bit about Nusach Sfard, the Tefillah. Why do we call it Spanish Tefillah? Which slightly different answer, and I think a very interesting answer. We will discuss that, Harry. Excellent question. That is the number one question I expected to get asked, and you're ahead of the game. You asked it first. But let's first talk about a little bit of a dramatic change that happened in the year 1539. So if you look on sheet 1, source number 7. Why do we have Chazaras Hashatz? Why do we repeat the prayer, the Shemona Esrei, in Shachris and Mincha, the morning and afternoon? So source number 7, Rosh Hashanah Lamed Dalet Amud Beis Kanya Amr Lola Rabban Gamliel L'Dvarecha Lamed Tzibor Mispalalim. Why do we have that special prayer for the entire congregation? Amr Lahem Kidei Lahastir. Why does everyone daven quietly? Kidei Lahastir Shliach Tzibor Tfilaso. So the Shliach Tzibor, so he can prepare. That's why we have the silent Shemona Esrei, and then he does it. Amr Lahem Rabban Gamliel L'Divreichem. So, okay, according to you, that you hold that the silent Shemona Esrei is the most important. So, Lama Shaliach Tzibor Yored Lifnei Teva. Why does the Shaliach Tzibor go repeat the Shemona Esrei? Amar Lo Kedei Lahotzi Es She'eno Baki. In order to fulfill the obligation for people who don't know how to pray themselves. So, if we are all Yotzei, everyone fulfills their obligation when we do the silent Shemona Esrei. So, why do we have the Shaliach Tzibor repeat it? Because not everybody can daven. Nowadays, we have Sidurim, but not everybody can read Hebrew. Well, we have transliterated, but not everybody has that, and not everybody even knows what they're saying. So for them, the Shaliach Tzibor, not everybody, lots of people don't know what they're saying. Okay, so we have the Shaliach Tzibor repeating the Shemona Esrei to fulfill the obligation for everybody. So what happens? What happens when Shaliach Tzibor gets up there and starts repeating the Shemona Esrei that most of us already did? So it's inevitable. People will be bored and will talk. Inevitable. Well, not inevitable. Actually can't be stopped. But as if 2,000 years of experience teach us anything, is that it will happen. So what happens if the learned people, the people who went to yeshiva, the Bnei Torah, they're talking during the repetition of the Shemona Esrei? So what are the unlearned people, the people who didn't go to yeshiva, people who don't know how to daven? What are they going to do? Well, this guy's a rabbi. He has smicha. He's talking. I can talk. And so everybody, the people who don't know how to pray, they're going to talk also. And in the end, the Shaliach Tzibor's repetition is not only useless, he's saying brachas that are not valid. So to solve this problem, the Rambam instituted this. Get this. If you're not familiar with this, you will like this. Only one prayer. The Shaliach Tzibor gets up, starts davening, and everybody davens along word for word with the Shaliach Tzibor. He instituted that in Egypt in his day. So there's so you're probably familiar with this. It's popular in some yeshivas and some offices. My office as well. They didn't ask me. They just did it. It's called Heicha Kedusha, right? So the Shaliach Tzibor gets up. He says the first 3 brachos, and then the first 2 brachos, and then we all say Kedusha together. He says the 3rd bracha, and then everyone goes on their own. So that is a pretty quick solution. The Rambam solution was better than that. The Rambam solution was the Shaliach Tzibor says the whole thing out loud. People who know how to daven say it along with him, and people who don't, just listen. So he instituted that. It was in Egypt. It spread to Israel, Lebanon, Syria. It had legs, and you understand why. But it's a little bit of a shock because it's against the Gemara. He kind of, with his understanding of halacha and of minhag and all that, he kind of made it up. And he instituted it to solve a problem. And he says very specifically, he says, this is because we have a specific problem in Egypt, so we're doing that. The Rambam died in the year 1204. 1539. So we spoke about the Radbaz last week. The Radbaz came from Egypt. He was huge. In 1517, when the Ottomans conquered Egypt, they appointed him as the Chacham Bashi, the chief rabbi. That was 1517. So he's an immigrant. He's a newcomer to Egypt, but he's a big rabbi. And after about 2 decades, he says, okay, now it's time. It's time for me to end this practice. Had enough of it. He says, look, in the Rambam's time, there was one Egyptian community. Everybody did the same thing. But now we have, look, the Spanish immigrants, they all do a normal silent Shemona Esrei and then a Chazar Sashatz. And the Sicilians and the Italians, everybody who immigrated to Egypt was a happening place in those days, was doing it the normal way, the way we did in times of the Gemara and the Mishnah and everywhere else in the world. Only these native Egyptian Jews who have been there for generations are doing it this strange Rambam way. And he says, look, in Israel, Lebanon, Syria, at one point they did follow the Rambam's takana, the Rambam's way, but they stopped. They realized we got to be like every other Jew. So the Radbaz got up. So look at source 8. And let's figure out whether this is a proof for the Radbaz to end it or a proof against the Radbaz. So Gemara Tanis Chav Ches Amud Beis. Rav Ikla LaBavel. Rav went to Bavel. Chazinu the Kakaru Halela Bereish Yarcha. It was Rosh Chodesh, and they said Hallel. And Hallel on Rosh Chodesh actually is a little questionable. It's not a Yom Tov. There was no miracle. Why are we saying Hallel on Rosh Chodesh? The Rambam actually holds, La Halacha, you should not say a bracha on Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. Very few people do. The Sephardim don't say a bracha on Hallel?
Syrians do, Moroccans do.
So, different types of Sephardim, and Briskers also don't say a bracha on Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. So Rav came there and he saw they're saying Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. Sover Avsukinu. He tried to get the Babylonians to change, to stop saying Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. Kevan de Komedalgi Diluge, but since they skip, they only say a half a Hallel. They don't say the whole thing. The Gemara says anyone who says Hallel on every day, it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing you're not supposed to say. You only say Hallel on days where you're obligated to say it. Some other time we can talk about why. But there, they didn't say the whole Hallel. They skipped. They said a half Hallel, like we do. So once he saw that, Amar Shmamina Minag Avoseim Biyadehim. Oh, they should follow their minhag. So maybe you could say, like in the times of the Rambam, Minag Avoseim Biyadehim. Let them follow the minhag. So why is the Radbaz stopping their practice of just one tefillah? Or you could say the other way. So the way the Radbaz says it is, no, when there is an Isser involved, by saying a whole Hallel, that is not allowed, that's Asur. So then Rav was going to stop it. And the Radbaz said, it's only when he realized it was a half Hallel, that's not Asur, so he wasn't going to stop it. So when it comes to the Shaliach Tzibur saying this Shemona Esrei, where other people are either davening or they're talking, so nobody's answering Amen, and that's Asur, so therefore he says that repetition of the Shaliach Tzibur is Asur, and therefore you're not allowed, therefore he was able to stop it. So how could the Rambam institute it if it was Asur? So he said, no, there's a change. There are a few changes. And I don't fully understand this, as I'll point out. It seems like the changes contradict each other. So first of all, the Rambam instituted it for what reason? To get people to stop talking. So the Radbaz says, look, I've been in those Egyptian synagogues. You know what they do? They daven quickly, and then they start talking while the Shaliach Tzibur is going a little slower. So no matter what, they're talking anyway, so it doesn't solve the problem. So number two, in those days there was one Egyptian community, but now there are multiple communities, and most communities have a regular repetition, silent Shemona Esrei and repetition. So now it's already losis go to do. It's a different practices, dramatically different practices within a community. That's not allowed. That's why he says it's asur. It's losis go to do. You're not allowed to have different communities. It looks like they're different Torahs, so you're not allowed to do that. If we have time, we'll see that's not so simple. But that was the Radbaz position. And as well, he said, but nowadays, listen to this. The Spanish immigrants talking. Nowadays, people in Egypt are more learned. Right? We got Spanish people moved in, and they know Torah. They're learning. They're doing Daf Yomi. They're much more learned than the old times. So we don't need it. There's less talking, so we don't even need this change. So therefore, he said, I'm allowed to end this practice, and that's what he did. And you don't see it. I'm not familiar. I don't think anybody does that nowadays. But he said. So what did he say before? He said at first, people are davening quickly and then talking in Egypt. So therefore, the takana doesn't solve the problem. But then he says, but actually, we're more learned, so there's less talking. So was it more talking or less talking? I don't know. But whatever it was, the Radbaz came to Egypt, became the chief rabbi, and after 20 years, stopped a very visible practice that they had been doing for over 300 years that the Rambam himself had instituted. That takes broad shoulders. Not everybody could pull that off. If I would go into a community and do that, if I would go into a Sephardic community and say, that minhag you've been doing for 300 years, no more, they chase me out of town. The Radbaz in those days, that's part of the Spanish influence on the Middle East, that he could do that, and he did it. Okay, so let's move on to... so that was source 9, just pointing out that it says, Hey Reish Tzadi Tet. That was a year. That's 1539 when it all happened. This is interesting, actually. Look, just look at source 9. Look how he calls him. Ma'aseh Shahaya B'Shnas Hey Reish Tzadi Tes Le'Yitzira, from the creation. If you remember, the Radbaz, when he came to Egypt, he stopped their practice of counting from Minyan Shtoros, right, when the Greeks conquered the Persians, and he said you have to count from creation, and that's what he's doing now. Nisaru Kahal HaSfaradim, the Spanish community, Al Kahal HaMusta'aravim. I don't know exactly what Musta'aravim means, but you see the Arab in there. They were calling the Egyptian Jews some sort of Arab. Okay? That I saw that. I was like, that sounds like a not nice name to call Jews. Maybe that's what they call themselves to show that they're real Egyptians, they're real patriotic citizens. I don't know. I don't know. It seems strange to me, but that's because we're not from there. 500 years ago. Okay, so let's move on to sheet 2, and let's talk about the Nusach Sfard, the actual text of the tefillah that they had. And I'd like to discuss how the Spanish immigrants influenced what people daven, the actual words that they said, and changed the actual tefillahs that they were saying in the Middle East.
Can I just ask one thing? I always notice in text here, and you picked up on this here, just a tangent, just on the sheets. Whenever you see Mishnah's quote, more often than not, they're in the kudos. When it comes to Gemaras, there aren't any nekudos. Why is that? Because they're in Hebrew, and Mishnah's is in Hebrew, and Gemaras is in Arabic.
I'll give you two answers. So the question is, why, when you see Mishnah abroad, does it have the vowels in it, and Gemara usually doesn't? So there are two answers. One is practical, and one is historical. Practical simply is most people go to one or two websites and copy it from there, and those two websites have the vowels in the Mishnah. So that's the practical answer. But there are vowels. There are at least two editions I've seen of Gemaras with vowels in them. There's Steinsaltz, who has it. And then there's this other the Vilna Shas, and somebody put the vowels in, and the Art Scroll Gemara. At least, I don't know if the printed ones? The iPad app has the vowels in it. You could turn it on, turn it off, but they have it in it.
Well, no, the translated version also has it.
Oh, okay. So the Art Scroll, but they don't make it available for free online.
Right, they do it for illustrative purposes, for teaching purposes. They don't do it, I'm just talking about the narrative here.
Okay. And I should also add that the current Steinsaltz edition has it in, I guess the Steinsaltz is obvious, but the current has it as well, the vowels in there. Historically, though, if you look at all the old Gemaras, they don't have vowels in them. There's a famous manuscript of the Mishnah, the Munich manuscript, has the vowels in it, and that's when you want to know how to pronounce a word the way they pronounced it 1,000 years ago. You go to this manuscript. I don't know if it's 1,000, probably more like 800 years ago. It has the vowels in it. And so some of the oldest manuscripts we have of the Mishnah have the vowels in it. So that's all I can tell you.
But those do have vowels in the Gemara as well?
Not in the Gemara, only in the Mishnah.
What was the reason for that?
Well, it could be the Mishnah is much shorter. That's all I got. I got nothing more than that.
I have one.
You have an answer? Okay.
Gemara was historically only for the Talmidei Chacham.
Oh, so the Gemara was for the scholars, and Mishnah was for the regular people. Okay. That's another good reason. But in practical, if you look at the source sheet, it's because I copied from a website that had, and I wasn't going to go in and start deleting that. So we call the Sidurim that the Sephardim use, we call it Sfard. But when we're in this shul, what we call Sfard is the Hasidic Nusach that is really Ashkenaz, but changed in different ways, different communities, different Hasidic Rebbes, but changed to follow the teachings of Kabbalah, mainly of the Arizal. So should we call what the Sephardim daven Nusach Sfard, or should we call it, in Israel they don't call it that. In Israel they call it Nusach Edot HaMizrach, from the eastern communities. So which is more accurate? And the truth is they're both accurate. They're both good. But I'd like to talk about whether there's any legitimacy whatsoever to call it Nusach Sfard, and spoiler alert, yes, there is. So the question came up. To answer this, let's look at the question of, can you change your Nusach? Can you change, and this is very relevant to us today, can you change what you daven? Can you take one siddur and flip it with another and use it? So the Maharshtam, Reb Shmuel de Medina, he was the big rabbi in Salonika in Greece. He was born in 1506, so a little after the expulsion from Spain. And early, as a young man, he was already considered one of the Gedolei Hador. He got a shaila from the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef, when he was about 40 years old. That's 45 maybe. That's pretty impressive. He was already, by the time he was 40, he was getting shailas from all over the region. So in Salonika, they had multiple communities because all the people who were expelled from Christian lands, they came there, and they moved as groups. Thousands of people moved together and created their own communities. So the Italians, and keep in mind, the word Italian itself is anachronistic. There was no Italy. There were different regions in there. There was the Sicily and Venice, and there are different regions there. But in general, the Italians asked this question. They set up their own communities, and they had their own nusach, they had their own sidurim. But in those days, they didn't have printing press. Or the printing press actually had been invented, but it wasn't printing their sidurim yet. So the Italians in Salonika said, the kids, so they had, okay, good. So the chazan has a machzor, probably the rabbi has a machzor, the old people. Some of the young kids had never seen a machzor for Rosh Hashanah in their lives. They said, we've never seen an Italian machzor. We all have Sfard machzorim. So can we daven Nusach Sfard? Well, how are we supposed? So when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, so it gets complicated, especially with all the piyutim, and then you have the slichos before Rosh Hashanah. So they have to listen to the chazan and either repeat after him or just say amen after him. It's tough. It's difficult. Or they have to memorize it in advance. Not so easy. So they said, look, we're born here. It's a majority Sfard community. Can we switch? Or, right, because the chazan is going to be daven Nusach Sicily or whatever it is, and we want to daven Nusach Sfard. So, okay, so the old people won't let us change. So, you know what? Down the street, we'll start our own minyan. That's when things start to get nasty, right? Historically, nothing's changed. And they say also in the question to the Maharshtam, they say, and Nusach Sfard is simpler and it's sweeter. They like Nusach Sfard. What's going on? Let's clue. Something's going on here. So if we look at the first source on sheet 2, Makom shenahagu lasos malacha be'arvei psachim ad chasos. Right. So after noon on Erev Pesach, none of us are allowed to do malacha because that's when they brought the Korban Pesach. And even if we don't bring the Korban Pesach today, we're still not. It's like it has the halacha of Chol HaMoed. But before that, so there are different places had different minhagim in the morning. So if you're in a place where you have the minhag that you do malacha, you're allowed to work on the morning of Erev Pesach. So osin, that's fine. Makom shenagu shelo lasos ein osin. If the place where you are is that they don't do malacha, so you don't. So the mission is not is saying do whatever your minhag is. It's fine. So then it gets interesting. If you travel, you come from a place where we do malacha in the morning of Erev Pesach, but you're in a place, you've traveled, you're in a place where they don't. Oh, mimakam she'ein osin lemakam she'osin, or vice versa. You don't do malacha, that's where you come from, but you're in a place where they do. So then, nosin olav chumrei makam she'yatzam misham, v'chumrei makam she'halach l'sham. You have to take the most machmir, the strictest position, meaning don't do malacha. If you're in a place where they do, but you don't, or you do, but they don't do malacha. And v'al yishana adam mipnei machlokas. So there's a lot in this Mishnah that we can't even touch a tiny bit of it because there's so much in this Mishnah. But the main point is that you have to follow the minhag where you come from, where you come from, and you have to take the chumrah, the strictness of where you're going to. So source 2 is the source of all our problems. The Gemara on this Mishnah, Bnei Beishan, these people called Bnei Beishan, no deluhavu azlin mitzor litzidon b'malei shabasa. On Erev Shabbos, on Friday, they would not travel the distance from Ksur to Tzidon. I don't know what that distance is, but they wouldn't go that far because they're worried you'll get stuck, you'll get a flat tire, whatever it is, and you'll end up having to do malacha on Shabbos. So in order to prepare for Shabbos and to avoid having to do malacha just in case, they don't travel that far on Erev Shabbos. Which, like you don't take a flight at 2 p.m. when Shabbos is at 6 o'clock, and you have to land exactly and get in the cab and get to your house just before Shkia. You don't do that. That's stupid because something could go wrong. Something always goes wrong. So here they actually had a minhag that they're not allowed to do that. So Asu Banayu, so these people came, the descendants of the Bnei Beishan came, Kame de Rabbi Yochanan, they went to Rabbi Yochanan and said, Amrulo, Avhasun Efshar Lahu. Our ancestors, they were able to keep that strictness and not travel that distance on Erev Shabbos. Anan lo Efshalon. But it's too hard for us. We can't do it. We have places to go, people to see. At Erev Shabbos, we can't do it. So, in other words, are we allowed to violate this minhag or toss the minhag aside? So, Amr Lahu, Rabbi Yochanan said to them, Kfar kiblu avoseichem aleichem. That's too bad. Your ancestors accepted this minhag. Shenema shema b'ni misar vicha v'al titosh Torah simecha. You have to follow that minhag. So who were these Bnei Beishan? This is important. It's a machlokas between the Pri Chadash and the Pri Toar. They lived about 100 years after the Maharshtam. The Pri Chadash says Bnei Beishan. Beishan is a contraction of Beis She'an. It's a city in Israel. These were the people who lived in Beit She'an. Beit She'an. It still exists. It's a place. They lived in the place where the place had the minhag of nobody travels that far on Erev Shabbos. And he said, look, you live there. You got to keep the minhag. The Pretor says, no, they're descendants of someone named Beishan. It's a family minhag. Their ancestor, Beishan, he accepted the minhag, and they have to follow the family minhag. It's not dependent on place. It's dependent on who you are and where you come from, your family. The nafkamina, the difference is, if you move, according to the Pretor, you still have to follow your family minhag. The Pri Chadash says, no, if you move and you settle into a community that doesn't have that minhag, so then you don't have to follow it anymore. You become part of that, you assimilate into that community, you follow all their minhagim, and then you can travel on Erev Shabbos. So that's what they say. If you want to eat kitnios, if you're not Ashkenaz, you want to eat kitnios on Pesach, so you have to join a Sephardic community 100%, follow all the Sephardic minhagim, wake up early for slichos, all of Elul, and then you can eat kitnios on Pesach, and you can have roast meat on Pesach night. But yeah, that means you have to be a Sephardic 100%. There are no games allowed. So the Maharshtam says, so it sounds like you're not allowed to change your nusach, especially because all these Italians, they didn't move into the Sephardic community. They didn't move into the Greek community. They all settled and set up their own Italian community. So they have to keep the Italian minhag. So the Maharshtam says, this is controversial. He said something wild. He said, think of all the examples in the Mishnah and the Gemara about minhagim that you have to keep. They're all about not violating an Isser. Whether it's about not doing malacha on Erev Pesach, because you might do malacha when it's not allowed. Or You're not allowed to. Another one mentions you're not allowed to sell a domesticated animal to a non-Jew, because you might sell an animal that's used for work. An animal that's used for work, he might use it on Shabbos before it's a full sale, and therefore your animal will be violating Shabbos, which is one of the Ten Commandments, part of the Ten Commandments. So it's a minhag. It's very far removed, but it's a minhag that's spot in Isser. The nusach of tefillah has nothing to do with Isser. So it says in Maharshdam, daven whatever you want. I don't care. You want to daven Sfard? Go daven Sfard. You want to daven Ashkenaz? He doesn't say that. But you could daven whatever nusach you want. It has nothing to do with an Isser. This is not fully agreed on. This, I'm not recommending anybody practice this. The Sholem Eshiv in the 60s or 70s, he quotes his Maharshdam and says, what is he talking about? We're Ashkenazim. We follow the Ramah, daven nusach Ashkenaz. I'm sure, I haven't looked, I'm sure there's a Sephardic post, a Hasidic posek who quotes it and says, well, yeah, our Sfard, not their Sfard. Or, this is not everybody agrees with the Maharshdam, to put it lightly, that it's only minhag Isser. But that's what he said. But he had something else. He says not only that, something puzzling. Puzzling, which I think only Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, 500 years later, figured out what he meant. So the Maharshdam says, Sfard is better because it's clear and it's understandable. You know what you daven. Meaning Italian nusach, they don't know what they're saying. They don't understand it. So what's he talking about? So it's clear, first of all, he's not talking about our nusach Sfard that we have today, because the Arizal lived at the same time as the Maharshdam. He lived in Svas, the Maharshdam lived in Greece, in Salonika, so there was no nusach Ari or nusach Sfard at that time. He meant the Spanish nusach. So Rav Yosef says, if you notice, we don't have it. I didn't put it down here. He talks about Rabbi Yehuda Halevi and Ibn Ezra and how they wrote it, and it's so beautiful and so clear and easy to understand. He's talking about their piyutim. He's talking about Rosh Hashanah. So sure, the brachos, they're pretty much the same. Italian, Spanish, Greek, they say the same brachos more or less. It's just pretty much the same. But the piyutim are wildly different. If you see the slichos, the Sephardic slichos, the real Sephardic slichos. So I daven nusach Ashkenaz in a nusach Sfard shul, and I bring my Ashkenaz machzer here, or Rabbi Sachs machzer, or Rabbi Soloveitchik machzer. I bring it here, and I can follow 100%. We say the same slichos pretty much. The only big difference between Ashkenaz and our Sfard is the avoda on Yom Kippur, in which the Ashkenaz avoda of Yom Kippur, the order doesn't follow halacha. And Rav Soloveitchik actually said, even Ashkenazim should say the Sfard avoda, and most Ashkenaz machzorim is in the back. You just flip to the back, and that follows the order that we hold halacha l'maisa. But other than that, it's the same piyutim. And do you understand? It's hard to understand. You have to be doing it for decades.
Very different.
You're
I mean, Polish, right now you have slichos Polish and you have slichos Lita, and the order is different. We don't say the same slichos.
It's pretty much the same words. Are you saying that each day they say different things?
They say different piyutim.
Okay, that's slichot. But the piyutim on Rosh Hashanah are pretty much the same.
Yes, yeah.
And but if you compare the slichos of Ashkenaz or Sfard to the Sephardic ones you can understand. Ours, maybe we'd understand it if we said it slower. I'm not so sure about that. It's very, very hard to understand our slichos, and our piyutim are also very hard. The Ashkenazic poets were just really deep and profound and used very hard words, while the Sephardic poets were the best poets in history. I mean, Yehuda Halevi, Ibn Ezra, they knew how to write a simple poem that had deep profundity in it. So he's saying, so the Maharshdam is saying as follows, that the piyutim of Sfard, of Spain, because where do they live? Rabbi Yehuda Levi, Spain, Ibn Ezra, Spain. All the great Paitanim lived in Spain. So the poets of Spain won over the Middle East and took over their tefillah, their nusach, their piyutim, as opposed to Ashkenaz, where we only use a few of them. We use some, but only a few of them, and we have our own from our own Chasidei Ashkenaz and others. So from this Maharshdam, as Rav Ovadia Yosef understands it, I'm deducing that, the Spanish exiles, or the Spanish poets, and the Spanish exiles brought with them the beautiful Spanish davening, and that took over the Middle East. And now the Middle Easterns, the Eidot HaMizrach, are actually using tefillos, slichos, and piyutim that come from Spain. So Spain took over the Middle East in many ways. Although now, 500 years later, we don't think of it that way. That's why we call it Nusach Sfard, because it's literally Spanish. So I see we still have a lot to go on source sheet 2. And Yirtzeh Hashem, next week we'll continue a little more with tefillah. And next week we get into some real, literal, physical machloksim. So Yirtzeh Hashem, everybody should come back. I just want to thank the Krieger family. I didn't thank them in advance. Thank them for sponsoring tonight's meal. And I want to remind everyone, 8:15 Mincha Ma'ariv throughout the week. And if anyone could please sponsor future weeks, speak to Moshe Holzer. And again, thank you, Moshe Holzer, for organizing this week and the whole summer.